There are things you can't unsee, not because they're too terrible, but because they're too precise, too specific, too much yours. I was sitting on the floor of his office, laptop on my knees. Rain outside, and I didn't know how much time had passed. An hour, maybe 2, maybe 5 minutes. Time behaves strangely when the ground drops out from under you. I was reading his novel, the novel he'd described as, "This is nothing, just an exercise, don't waste your time," the novel he never showed anyone. The novel I found by accident. A flash drive had slipped behind the desk drawer. I was looking for a charger. I'm an editor by training. For 11 years, I've been reading other people's texts and finding the truth in them that authors sometimes can't see themselves. It's an occupational hazard. You start seeing through people, through their words, through their choice of details, through what they describe with love and what they rush past. I opened the file and started reading like an editor. I finished reading like a wife. If you think the worst part of betrayal is the fact itself, no. The worst part is when you realize everything was written in advance. Literally. I went back to the beginning. An editor's habit: if something doesn't add up, read it again from the start. Slowly, I tried to read it like someone else's text, like a manuscript from a stranger. Almost worked. On the 3rd page, he described her laugh. He wrote that she doesn't laugh the way other women laugh, not to be liked, just laughs, and the room becomes different. I know that laugh. I used to tell Andrea, "You laugh like a child, completely shameless." She'd get offended at first. Then she got used to it. Scott heard me say that, remembered it, wrote it down. Then came a scene by the window. The hero and she are standing, talking. She tells him, "I never understood people who are afraid to start over. It's not scary. It's just a new chapter. I know that conversation." November, 3 years ago, my birthday. Andrea came over with wine and stayed until midnight. I was in the kitchen. They were standing in the living room. I could hear their voices, and I thought, how nice that my husband and my best friend have so much in common. That's what happens when you think. I always told authors details don't lie. You can lie in dialogue, you can lie in plot. But what a person describes with love, that's real. That's theirs. Every detail about her was written with love. Every detail about the hero's wife rushed. Like a stage direction in parentheses. Like furniture in a room, it's there, fine. I scrolled to the end. Checked the date of the last edit. 2 months ago. This was not an exercise. I stared at that date for a long time, 2 months ago. Which meant he'd opened that file back in March. In March, we went away for the weekend to Asheville. He suggested it himself. Said, "You need a break, you've been working too hard." I was touched. Now I think, maybe that was one of the versions of the ending. A test to see if he could still stay. I scrolled to the last pages. The final chapter was unfinished. A few paragraphs, then it broke off. But before it, 3 separate drafts. No titles, just one after another. In the first one, the hero leaves at night, leaves a note on the kitchen table. The note is short, I can't explain it, just know it's not your fault. Standard cowardice dressed up as nobility. In the second one, the wife finds out herself. Finds something, Scott didn't specify what, and she lets him go. Calmly, says, "I felt this a long time ago, go." This was his favorite version. I understood immediately. He wanted me to free him myself, for it to be my decision. The third draft was 1 sentence. "She deserves someone who would have stayed." That was it. I sat there staring at that sentence. 11 years, 2 books I wrote while we were together, his name in every acknowledgments first. My gratitude, my anchor, my first reader, who had been writing his own thing the whole time. You know what's strange? I didn't cry. Editors don't cry over manuscripts. They make notes in the margins. And I understood that's exactly what I was going to do. I heard his car 2 minutes before he came in. that was enough time. Flash drive in my pocket. Laptop closed, shifted to the edge of the desk. That's where it always sits. I got up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, stood at the sink with my back to the door. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. He came in, dropped his keys on the entry table, always the same spot, 11 years the same spot. I heard him take off his coat, then footsteps, then his hands on my shoulders and a kiss on the top of my head. "How was your day?" "Fine, I was editing." True enough if you think about it. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I could order Thai." "Sure." He took out his phone. I watched him through the reflection in the dark window. It had gotten dark outside, and the window was working like a mirror. He didn't know I was watching. I was looking for that man in him, the one who writes about someone else's laugh with such tenderness, the one who'd been figuring out how to leave for 3 years, the one who suggested Asheville in March, and I still don't know what that was really about. He looked normal. Tired, a little distracted, scrolling through the menu. Regular Scott. That's the problem with betrayal. Traitors look like everyone else. No signs, no mark on their forehead. You live next to them, eat at the same table, and have no idea. Or you do, you just don't want to know. I thought about that honestly, standing at the sink. Were there moments? There were. I explained them away as tiredness, work, just life, because the other explanation required action. And action meant the end of the familiar world. We all choose not to know sometimes. It's not weakness, it's just fear. "Tom Kha or Pad Thai?" he asked. "Tom Kha," he nodded, eyes still on his phone. "And I decided not tonight. Tonight I'm just watching." We ate. Watched something on TV, I don't remember what. He fell asleep at 11. I could hear his breathing change, first even, then slightly deeper. 11 years beside him, I know that shift by heart. I know he sleeps on his left side. I know that if you pull the blanket, he won't wake up. I know everything. Turns out that means nothing. I lay there staring at the ceiling. Outside, cars passed occasionally, a strip of light moving across the ceiling and disappearing. I counted them, then stopped. 3 years ago, he started that file. 3 years ago, that was the summer I was finishing my second book. I remember that summer well. The deadline was burning. I barely left the office, ordered food in, apologized for being a bad wife. Scott would say, "Stop it, I understand, just work." He was patient, attentive, cooked himself, didn't bother me. Now I think it was convenient for him that I didn't leave the office. That summer Andrea came over a lot. To keep me company, she said, so I wouldn't feel guilty about not spending time with friends. They'd sit in the kitchen. I could hear voices and laughter, her laugh, that one, the shameless one, and I thought how lucky I was. My husband and my best friend had found common ground. How lucky I was. I introduced them 8 years ago. A party at mutual friends, I dragged Scott across the room, "Meet Andrea. We've been friends since college. She's wonderful." He shook her hand. She smiled, an ordinary introduction. I was so glad they got along. There's a trap thinking that if you're a good person, bad things won't happen to you. That kindness protects you. That if you trust people, they'll trust you back. I believed that for 11 years. That's not how it works. Not even close. Somewhere around 1 in the morning, I realized I was angry. Not at Scott, not at Andrea. At myself for working so hard not to notice. For always choosing the convenient explanation. For being proud of my trust like it was a virtue when it was just cowardice in pretty packaging. The anger was clean, almost cold. And in that cold anger, I finally understood what I was going to do. He got up at 7. I was already in the kitchen. Coffee made, table set, everything as usual. I'd even made toast. I don't know why. I guess my hands needed something to do. Scott came in, slightly surprised. I usually sleep later. "Couldn't sleep?" "I was writing," I said. He nodded, poured his coffee, sat down across from me. The flash drive was sitting next to his plate. Small, gray, completely ordinary, he didn't notice it right away, reached for a piece of toast and saw it. The pause was 3 seconds, maybe 4, I counted. He looked up, met my eyes. I didn't look away. For the first time in years, I was looking at him without trying to find anything in him, just looking. "Megan, don't," I said. "I read carefully. I'm an editor, remember." He set down his mug, slowly, like a man buying time, looking for words, a version, an explanation. I knew that process. I'd done it myself with manuscripts when the writing is bad and you need to find a gentle way to say so. Gentle wasn't required right now. "It's not what you think," he said, 11 years with a person. And the best he could find was, "It's not what you think." 3 drafts of the ending, I said. In one you leave at night. In another I let you go myself. In the third, 1 sentence. "She deserves someone who would have stayed. Which one were you planning to use?" Silence. A car passed outside. A dog barked somewhere. An ordinary morning in an ordinary neighborhood. "That was a long time ago," he said finally. It's over." "When?" A pause. "About 1.5 years ago," I nodded. 1.5 years ago, he gave me a trip to Italy for my birthday. Said, "You've always wanted to go." I was touched. I thought, he remembers, he pays attention, he loves me. Now I think that was another draft of the ending. One that didn't make it into the file. You know what makes betrayal truly unbearable? Not the fact itself. It's that you start rewriting everything that came before. Every gift, every trip, every kiss on the top of your head. You search, was that real? Or was that a draft too? And you almost never find the answer. I let him sit in silence for about 10 seconds. Then I said, "Andrea." Not a question, just the name. He didn't answer right away. Stared at the table, at the flash drive, at his hands, anywhere but me. And in that silence was everything I needed to know. I introduced them 8 years ago myself. Dragged him across the room, "Meet her, this is my best friend, she's wonderful." He shook her hand, she smiled. I stood right there and was glad. 8 years ago, I wrote the first page of their story without even knowing it. "Megan, listen, how long, what, how long did it last?" A pause, then. "About 1 year." About 1 year. The phrasing of someone who doesn't want to give an exact number. I know that. I used to edit authors the same way when the details were uncomfortable. About, roughly, somewhere around, it always means exactly, but I won't say. "That summer," I said, "when I was finishing the book." He didn't answer, but his shoulders dropped an inch, enough, so I was right. While I was sitting in my office apologizing for being a bad wife, they were sitting in my kitchen, drinking my wine, laughing with her laugh. I waited until the anger had passed enough to speak evenly. She knew we were married. Yes, she was in our home at this table. Yes, after it started. Yes. 3 one-word answers, 3 small yesies, each heavier than the last. I looked at him and thought, this is the person I lived with for 11 years. I know how he sleeps. I know what he orders at the Thai place. I know he's afraid to fly but would never admit it. I know everything. And I knew nothing. There's a moment in a bad manuscript when you realize the author was writing one story, but a completely different one came out. And there's nothing to fix. You can only acknowledge it, this isn't what was intended, and start over. I stood up, took the flash drive from the table. "I need a few days," I said. "Alone." He nodded, didn't object. Maybe he knew it was too late to object. Maybe he was just tired of carrying all of this for 3 years. I took my bag, my keys, my coat from the hook. I stopped at the door, I don't know why, turned around. Scott was sitting at the table, staring into his mug. He looked like a man who felt lighter. And that was unexpectedly not painful, just information. He'd carried this for 3 years, 3 versions of the ending, never used any of them. Sometimes people don't leave not because they love you, but because they're afraid. That's not the same thing. It's very important to understand the difference. I closed the door, quietly. I hadn't planned to go to my mom's. I just ended up on her street. My hands turned the wheel on their own. I only noticed when I was already parking in front of the familiar yard with the perpetually crooked mailbox. Dad had been meaning to fix it for 20 years. Never did. Mom left it the way it is. She says it's a memory. I sat in the car for 3 minutes, thinking maybe this isn't a good idea. She'll start asking questions, I'll start answering, and everything will become more real than I need it to be right now. Then I got out. She opened the door before I rang. She'd seen me through the window, looked at me for a second, didn't ask anything, just stepped aside. Coffee, please. That's what I love about my mom. She knows how to be quiet. Not everyone does. Most people fill silence with words because the silence makes them uncomfortable. Mom just puts the kettle on and waits. We sat in the kitchen. I held my mug with both hands, warming myself, even though the house was warm. I just needed something to hold. Scott, she asked finally, not as a statement, just Scott? Yes. She nodded, got up, straightened something on the windowsill. She has geraniums there, a whole army of pots. Then sat back down. How long? I don't know. I just found out yesterday. She was quiet for a moment. Have you cried? No. It'll pass, she said. Both things will pass. I wasn't entirely sure what she meant, the not crying or everything else. Probably both. Mom sometimes talks like that, briefly, and in that brevity everything fits that needs to. I stayed until evening. We didn't talk about Scott anymore. Watched some show, she fed me soup. I helped her sort through the bookshelf she'd been putting off for months. Ordinary things. Sometimes that's what help looks like, not words, not advice. Just ordinary things beside a person who knows you. I left at 9. At the door, my mom hugged me tight for real, said into my ear, "You'll be okay. You always have been." I nodded. Not because I was sure, just nodded. I didn't go home. The hotel had some neutral name, the Riverside Inn or something like that. I didn't choose it. I just saw the sign on the way and turned in. The room was ordinary. Bed, desk, window facing the parking lot. A painting above the bed, a boat at sunset, the kind they paint specifically so no one will feel anything. I set down my bag and sat on the edge of the bed. Quiet. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been alone in silence. Really alone, not while Scott was in the next room, not while he'd be back soon. Just alone, full stop. A strange feeling, not a bad one. I ordered food, some sandwich, didn't matter. While I waited, I took out my phone. 8 missed calls, Scott 3 times. Mom, once, she probably wanted to make sure I'd gotten an okay. Andrea 4 times, Andrea. I stared at her name on the screen. 4 calls in one evening. Typical Andrea, if no one picks up, she calls again. I used to tell her, "You're like a telemarketer." She'd laugh. I didn't call anyone back. Texted my mom, "Made it, all good, thank you." Put the phone under the pillow. The food came. I ate and looked out the window at the parking lot. Headlights of arriving cars. An ordinary evening for everyone else in the world. Then I cleared away the packaging, lay down on top of the covers without undressing, and stared at the ceiling. I was waiting for the pain. The real kind, the kind that twists you up and won't let you breathe. I'd read about it, written about it, edited other people's descriptions of that feeling. I knew what it was supposed to feel like. The pain was there, but it was quiet, like a dull point somewhere behind my sternum, not sharp. And then I cried, not loudly. The tears just came on their own. I barely noticed at first. I lay there crying up at the ceiling, thinking, there it is, finally, but it was strange, because I wasn't crying about him cheating. Not about Andrea, not about 11 years that now looked different. I was crying because this room was quiet. because no one would walk in. No one would ask how my day was. No one would kiss the top of my head without looking up. Because I was lying here alone and I didn't have to be anything for anyone right now. It felt like relief. I hadn't expected relief. Not at all. Then I thought maybe I've been tired for a long time, not of him specifically. Of the version of myself that lived in that house. Convenient, familiar, predictable Megan. The one who always knew where the keys were and what to order at the Thai place. Sometimes betrayal is just permission. Permission you couldn't give yourself. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying it's honest. Somewhere around midnight, I finally got undressed, climbed under the covers, and closed my eyes. My last thought was I need to buy a toothbrush in the morning. The most ordinary thought. And somehow, that was the thing that told me everything will be okay. I found an apartment in 4 days. The realtor showed me 8 options. I didn't pick the biggest one or the cheapest. I picked the one where the bedroom window faces east. She said, practical choice, good light in the mornings. I didn't explain that it wasn't about practicality. I just wanted to wake up and see that the day had already started, that the sun had already risen without asking permission. The first night, I slept on a mattress on the floor. The bed frame arrived the next day. Those were strange weeks. I went shopping and bought things that had always just been there. A coffee maker, towels 3, not 6, I don't need 6, a bath mat. I stood in Target in front of a shelf of bath mats and stared at them for 5 minutes. Blue, gray, beige, striped, plain. For 11 years ours had been beige. Scott picked it. I agreed. I didn't care. I picked dark blue, such a small thing. But I walked to my car thinking this was my decision. Completely mine. Nobody signed off on it. I know that sounds strange. Being happy about a bath mat when your life has fallen apart. But sometimes that's exactly how you put yourself back together. One piece at a time, coffee maker, towels, bath mat, I exist, I'm here. I choose blue. Scott and I talked twice. Briefly about practical things. He was polite. So was I. It was unexpectedly not hard. Maybe because the hardest conversation had already happened. Flash drive on the table, 3 yesies, Andrea's name out loud. After that, everything else was just details. The lawyer said with mutual consent the process would take 3 to 4 months. 3 to 4 months. 11 years and 3 to 4 months. I didn't know whether to be relieved or not. I decided just a fact. Accept it as a fact and move forward. Andrea wrote again. A long message. She understood everything. She wanted to explain. It was a long time ago. She didn't know how it happened. She'd thought about both of us. I read it. Then read it again. Then deleted it without responding. Not out of anger. Just some explanations don't change anything. They only make the person giving them feel better. I didn't need Andrea to feel better. On the 3rd week, I opened a new document. Not his, mine. A clean file, no one else's words. I sat down at the desk by the east window, even though it was evening by then and there was no sun. I'd already formed a habit of that spot. A good habit. I wrote the first line. There are things you can't unsee. I stopped. Read it back. In 3 weeks, it was the first thing that had felt right on the first try. No revisions, no second guessing. I wrote until 1 in the morning. Then closed the laptop, drank some water, went to bed. Outside the window was the city. Still a stranger, but a little bit mine. Falling asleep, I thought I need to call Carol. It's time. I called at 10 in the morning. Carol picks up after the second ring, always. 20 years in publishing, she says the phone is the only discipline she maintains without exception. Megan, I was starting to think you were dead. Not dead. Working on what? Something new, a pause. Carol knows how to pause, not awkward pauses, working ones. The kind where the person on the other end is actually thinking something through. When can I read it? Soon. That's not why I called. Another pause. Talk. That's what I value about Carol. No, what happened? Are you okay? I'm listening. Just talk. Economy of words as a professional trait. I looked out the window while I talked. East, morning sun, everything as usual. I kept it short. Flash drive, the novel, 3 drafts of the ending, Andrea, the conversation in the kitchen, the bath mat at Target. That last one I added without knowing why. It just came out. Carol didn't interrupt. I talked for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped. 5 seconds of silence. The mat, did you get blue or gray? Carol asked. I laughed, surprised myself, just laughed. Blue. Good, she said. Gray is surrender. Then she was quiet for another second and added in a different voice, quieter, without the publishing world tone. Megan, you're writing right now because you need somewhere to put the pain. That's fine. But if it turns out well, it'll be because you're finally writing about something real. You always kept a little distance, in both books. I didn't answer right away. She was right. I'd known it before, felt it when I edited my own work. Something always stayed behind glass, observing, not experiencing. Send me the first 100 pages when they're ready, Carol said. Don't rush, but don't drag it out either. Okay? And Megan, yes, blue is a good start. I put the phone down and sat by the window for a long time. There are people who say the right thing at the right moment, not because they know what to say, but because they know how to hear what isn't being said. Carol had been hearing me for 20 years, through 2 books, through revisions, through deadlines and self-doubt. I thought she knows me as an editor. Turns out she just knew me. I opened the laptop. Yesterday's document. The first line was still there, there are things you can't unsee. I scrolled down to where I'd stopped the night before, and wrote the next one. 8 months later, I came back to the lake. The first time since that November. Same parking lot. But different trees, July, everything green, the water warm and blue. In November, this place looked like the end of something. Now it was just a place by the water. A good place. I got out of the car and for the first time walked all the way to the edge of the water. I used to always stay in the car. I guess I needed time to get out. A lot had changed in 8 months. The divorce was finalized in March. Quickly, no court. Scott didn't contest a single point. I didn't ask why. Some questions don't make you richer, just heavier. We signed the papers in the lawyer's office and left through different doors. That felt right. I live on the 3rd floor, window facing east, sun in the mornings. Dark blue bath mat in the bathroom. Carol still asks about it every time she calls. It's become our joke. Small, warm. The kind of joke that only happens with people who were there when things were hard. Mom calls on Sundays. Sometimes I drive over, we watch shows, she feeds me soup, I help with something around the house. The crooked mailbox is still crooked. Mom still hasn't touched it. I understand it differently now. Some things you leave not because you can't fix them, but because you don't want to. I never called Andrea. She wrote a few more times. The last message was long explanations, apologies. She didn't know how it happened. I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, just some explanations exist for the person giving them, not the person receiving them. I didn't need them. That was also my decision. Completely mine. The book is finished. The 3rd book. 8 months from that morning in the hotel when I typed the first line into my phone, lying on an unfamiliar bed. Carol read the first 100 pages and called 3 days later. Said, "This is the best thing you've written." A pause. Then, "You finally stepped out from behind the glass." I knew what she meant. In my first 2 books, I always observed a little. Wrote about pain, but from a distance. Carefully, safely. This book I wrote from inside. No distance, no safety net. It hurts writing like that. And it's the only way to write something real. In the acknowledgments this time, Carol is first, then my mom. Then, and this took me a while, I wrote, for everyone who once sat by the water and didn't know what came next. You made it through, or you will. I stood at the edge and looked at the water. The duck was there. Same one or different, I don't know, paddling near the shore in no hurry. In November, I watched it from the car and thought, good for you, nowhere to be. Now I think it's just living. That's not philosophy, it's just living. I thought about Scott, not with pain, without anger, just thought about him. He was part of my life for 11 years, that's real. That happened. And what came after, that's real too. Both things fit side by side if you don't try to erase one of them. He wanted a new chapter. Spent 3 years writing about it, 3 versions of the ending, and still couldn't do it himself. Sometimes people don't leave not because they love you, but because they're afraid. That's not the same thing. It's very important to understand the difference. I made the decision for both of us. It's strange how it works. I wouldn't have left on my own. It was comfortable, familiar. 11 years is a long time, and habit is also a kind of life. His betrayal became the permission I couldn't give myself. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying it's honest. I found the fire in the book. I took out my phone, opened the last page of the manuscript, the final paragraph. I knew it by heart, but I wanted to read it here, by the water. A good ending. I closed my phone. Stood there 1 more minute. The duck looked at me. I looked at it. Then it swam off to wherever ducks go, and I walked off to wherever I was going.